Welcome to week 4. I'm coming to you from Death Canyon in Grand Teton National Forest up here in Wyoming. And I'm on this hike before a Sunday morning service on Saturday. I'm out here and I'm being reminded of some of the content we're going to look at this week and processing that. And of course, words or photos don't really do this justice, but I can only get so much of this into a single shot. Maybe at the end I'll pick the camera up and show you all of it. But there's something about the mountains and the trees that lift our eyes upward, that draw our eyes above our present status and our present situation. I'll get back down out of the shot, let you enjoy the view a little bit. So there's something about the mountains that do that, and it can't, well, for a Christian or for a theist of any kind, it can't help but draw your thoughts to God, to the divine, to the heavenly realm. I'm sure naturalists have another way of processing what we get to experience out here, but I like the way I get to interpret this. But they draw your eyes upwards, and that's the goal as we dive into Orthodox and medieval worship. That's the goal of their worship practices and their architecture. The architecture is meant to invoke a certain reverence and awe and a certain expression and atmosphere of worship. So there's some things that in Orthodox worship, theology and theology in general, and medieval thought and medieval theology that you may squint at or scratch your head about or not be so sure on. That's okay. But there's some things the main things I want you to look at and wrestle with and consider. Maybe there's still things you're like, nah, but I want you to seriously look at are their understanding of the grandeur of God in their attempt to help inspire an awe about Him. That how we gather affects how we view God, and there is an intimate side to Him that is expressed in the agape meal, our Eucharistic meals, and our Bible study, our small group type settings, to use more modern terms. But there's also something wholly other and magnificent about Him. And so they work to express this beauty of God that is in how grand He is, in their architecture, in their actions, and in their worship. And everything they do is intentional that way. So first you've got the beauty and the way that it lifts your eyes upwards and causes you to just stand in awe. The second thing is when you're out here, you feel like you can't take it all in. In words, one thing is to just look around and try to really appreciate everything you're getting to see. It's a whole nother thing to try to communicate that to somebody else. Words can go a long way, but you just can't ever really do this justice until you've seen it. Imagine me trying to explain this to you without being able to show you pictures or bring you here. You just have to experience it. So that's another thing about Orthodox theology, is something called negative theology or apophatic theology, where they realize they can never get the right words around who God is. Every analogy that gets one image of who He is, and there's many that God gives us that are right and good and are strong, but there's limits to them. They show us an aspect of Him, but we can't ever see the totality of God. And so they grow increasingly aware of this and concerned maybe perhaps in it. And so they start realizing the only fully right things that you can say about God are things you can say that He's not. Therefore, negative theology of what God isn't. And the heart behind that, I think, comes from the same way that's like, I can explain to you what I'm looking at right now, but it just won't quite do it justice. And I think that's what their heart is that they can explain God, but it never quite is good enough. So think about that, both as a challenge and as a freedom, maybe, perhaps. When you're writing worship songs, when you're writing theology, wherever God leads you, like, on one hand, there's a challenge to get it right. Well, on the other hand, maybe there's a grace to realize we can only get so right. That there's still always something else about Him that is waiting to be revealed. And some of that may not be till the other side of eternity. So, all right, this is week 4. I hope you really enjoyed this week's content. I know I certainly did in preparing it and studying it in my own way. So, dive in, get to the assignments. It's all straightforward, and God bless. I don't know how. Let me give you a view, actually.